Welcome everybody to Free Thinkers Hub monthly webinar. Today we're looking at the science of information theory with AREND van Campen. But before I introduce AREND, I just want to say who I am. So I'm Amina Ahmed and I'm founder of Free Thinkers Hub platform. And I set up the platform really to posit alternative thinking, not only to the mainstream to challenge some of the rhetoric that's around, but also to open up broad ways of viewing things. So AREND himself has a real diverse background, and he's very concerned with human and non-human life and the environment and social cohesion. And we met really at the start of my journey of setting up Free Thinkers Hub. So AREND is CEO and founder of the think tank and research institute Sustenance for All. And through his theory of change, he offers a scientifically sound solution to end the suffering caused by human behaviours. So the webinar today will look at a number of things, not least help us understand why nature can no longer be seen as matter and energy. And AREND introduces a third element to that, which he will talk about in much detail, as well as understanding how information theory opens up a broad domain of knowledge, which he says is as broad as nature and as complex as man's mind. So having said that, it's over to you, AREND, and I'm really looking forward to hearing you speak today.
Thank you very much. I'll just prepare my presentation in a moment. AREND van Campen. This webinar and the chance of being here. Thank you very much, Amina, for inviting me. Is about information. Information is not just a message or a something that you read in the paper or in a book, but it's much more. And if we become more aware of the value and the application possibilities of information, we may stand a chance to rectify the goals that we now want to pursue. And to achieve them, peace, love, and all that stuff is possible by using information to correct our ways. This is not just an idea, it's really scientifically demonstrable. So that's what I'm going to try today. Also use it for practical purposes and show you a unlimited amount of applications for it in our daily lives. Business, society, health, and so on. Okay. I'll put it on the screen now, just a second.
Okay, so AREND, I forgot to mention to the participants that they can post questions in the chat function. And so we'll pick them up at the end. Would you prefer to do that? Go through all your presentation and then pick up any questions at the end?
Yeah, I think maybe the questions we can do at the end. So the story is entire that I can tell. Okay. That we can discuss it. Doesn't take too long, the presentation, I believe. We can have more time to speak about it with the people, the audience.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Share screen, right? Okay. There we go. You can see it, right? So, yeah. Okay, let's start. Well, one of the major discoveries I did the last, let's see, at least 15 years, I've been researching, first of all, business ethics, truth, reality. And then I came down finally that the language of life is information. This is not just a thing, but when you look at it, and I'll show you some slides of major thinkers today who confirmed it by applying physics, science, and another forgotten science, which is called cybernetics. So the language of life is information. Living within and accepting physical limitation of reality, which I have called realiteit, or the limitations of reality, and the boundaries of functionality. So what we try to do in Sustenance for All is developing a science of reality for sustainable design based upon information theory and physics, and which enables us to verify and measure sustainability. we say that now at this moment, science is under attack. Well, we can look at it the last 2 years of COVID restrictions and rules, and science and scientists who spoke maybe in a different way than the acceptable narrative were silenced. Or so that is, of course, a way that science may not be accepted as it should be. Science is the inquiry, the information collection, really, and everything that is collectible as information should be at least considered to be science. Therefore, living systems, and this is the picture of Shannon, who was the founder of information theory. He says that including man-made organizations that fail to effectively implement information process and internal control system are likely to face an information deficit at some stage, resulting in degraded performance. Well, if you look at that and think about what is, for example, applicable to our lives, we would say a living system, me, I'm alive. If I ignore information that may warn me of I'm doing the wrong thing, I'm eating the wrong stuff, I'm smoking, and so on, it also degrades the performance of my being. It's as simple as that. So understanding our information deficits results in entropy or disorder, destabilization, is critical if you want to operate and sustain an effective organization or a living system such as yourself. So we say that organizations are also living systems of communications. It is really important that we see organization not just as a thing, but as a communicative system of information exchange. So when entropy enters, enforcement results. That's an observation we see because we say now entropy, disorder, is being caused by maybe decision making in politics and business. And because of the effects of those and the denial of those effects, for example, the impact on society or social cohesion, then creates the enforcement by politicians to shut out the information that says, hey, this is not going the right way. So enforcement to shut up, for example, censorship arises. This is, of course, not good because it creates more destabilization in the form of entropy. And Shannon, he said, information is the resolution of uncertainty. So we can be more certain if we allow all information. Now, is information the foundation of reality? Now, physicist Seth Lloyd, he says, the universe is a physical system which contains bits of information. Every elementary particle carries with it bits of information. Electrons carrying information interact with each other in a systemic way, performing a quantum logic operation. The computer and our cell phones work like the universe does because of the fact that they are part of the universe, and in order for them to work, they have to obey the same laws of physics. Now, in order for us to work, people, societies, organizations must also obey the laws of physics. There is no other way. We cannot escape them. And then he says, the bit is the ultimate, John Wheeler, says the bit is the ultimate unsplittable particle. So in other words, information is the basics for life, the language of life, and even more important than the quantum particles now being found by physics. So information is the basic of everything. And this is what confirmed now by physics, which is beautiful. And then Jim clearly, he says, again, a confirmation, information and energy obey the same universal laws of physics. Information creates order and structure. Erasure of information causes entropy, a measure of disorder in systems. The higher the entropy, the greater the disorder. Information can't be divorced from the physical world. with information, we can build order, structure, and beauty. Again, the basic fundamental building block of life is information, and with information, we can build order, structure, and beauty. But when we keep on suppressing, ignoring, denying information to correct our ways, we will be constantly in this entropic state, disorder. Hence, look around. Then, of course, Lynn Margulis, you know, the lady there, she is a mother more or less from symbiosis or symbiogenesis, living together of interdependent species. This is very important that we see now this week I followed an interview with Douglas Murray that we do not cooperate. We think, for example, by canceling other people, for example, your father has been a slave trader 400 years ago, and now this resonates to today, and so you cannot find a job. That is now being at hand. So it's really, really crazy that we have a world where we compete, where we fight. We do not see that life is based upon symbiosis, is dependent on cooperation. And that is the fact that we can now confirm also by information theory. Cooperation is the basis for survival, not just from two same species, but from all species, interactive, interdependent, and interconnected. This book, 600 pages, I read with much passion. James Gleick, who was also written the book in the 80s, on chaos theory. In the book, we can find this: information is a component of organism. A quote from the book by a biologist named Gamow: "The nucleus of a living cell is a storehouse of information. It is a transmitter of information on which the continuity of life depends. The study of genetics is the language of the cells." Well, this is very, very significant and very profound, because he confirms that, you know, the information is really where life upon depends. This is beautiful. So entropy is the unavailability of energy, another quote. That is what, when we have an information deficit, the energy to correct that system or to correct that situation is not longer there. And therefore, we have to find the information in the form of feedback, and then correcting that system with it. That's like a cybernetical reality. I'll show you in a few slides. Another very important book I read is Grammatical Man by Jeremy Campbell, because he wrote and he gave us a real good definition of information. He says, information gives shape to the shapeless. DNA codes our information, forming human patterns of thought. In this way, information spans the disparate fields of space-age computers, classical physics, molecular biology, and human communication, the evolution of language, and the evolution of man. Nature could no longer be seen as matter and energy, but must be interpreted as matter, energy, and information. And this is my main message as well today, because we are facing wicked problems. Now, a wicked problem, maybe you've heard of it, is a social or cultural problem that is difficult or impossible to solve for as many as 4 reasons: incomplete, contradictory knowledge, the number of people and opinions involved, the large economic burden, and the interconnected nature of these problems with other problems. Now, a wicked problem solution is possible by allowing all relevant information to correct it. And that's an enormous finding, because we can see a conflict now in Ukraine, Russia, as a wicked problem, right? But the information to stop it is available. And if we focus on the collection of information, so to stabilize it with information in the form of the energy needed to, stabilize and stop, for example, the conflict, is possible because of this. The information is there. This is a picture I was taken from me in Innsbruck in 2018 with the famous physicist Fritjof Capra, who wrote, for example, the book The Tao of Physics, The Turning Point, and more books about how to sustain life. And really, he says that living systems depend on the criteria needed for survival. For example, health, a non-polluted environment, social safety, biological and ecological balance. According to Materana and Varela Santiago theory of cognition, life is autopoietic. This means it creates, maintains, and sustains itself through communication. Cognition with the environment. Cognition is actually the processing of information. The sustenance of life, therefore, depends on the availability of creative conditions. Life that encounters destructive conditions will perish as it cannot be sustained or sustain itself anymore. Such systems stop learning because they don't understand that information forms the fabric of existence and functionality. I couldn't have said it better myself, but it's a quote that we talked about during a dinner in Innsbruck, which is, of course, very good. He says that only the systems that do not learn, do not adapt, adjust, they are dead systems. So I created two let's say physical equations, physics and also metaphysics really combined. And the one on the right up here is the P is the perception of man. The Ankh is the symbol for life. Information is I. R is the reality or the limitations of reality. And this is the symbol for entropy. So if we have a false perception, we see life without the information, beyond the reality, the limitations of reality. So maybe we start lying about it, always ends up in entropy. That's a definition. So what we can do, this order, we can then look for the information, right? Plus information, go down, and then I created this equation for negentropy, which means order. Life, or the continuation of life, living systems, is life plus information within the limitations of reality, and then, of course, by the perception of people. So what Fritjof Capra says, we are living in a crisis of perception. We don't see, we don't understand how reality and nature keep us alive. But if we do understand, when we do that, we can then adapt that and use that information to correct, so we can all live a well and a healthy life. So these two equations, I think, are quite important, because we can now, with these equations, we can measure and map what can be sustained and what is unsustainable. When I discovered these and I created these, I really was, it was appalled, and I was afraid almost. It was like I was shocked, because suddenly, by applying these equations, you can see that what we have been doing the last 6,000 years cannot be sustained. And life as we now created it, cannot be sustained. We are facing entropy all over. Therefore, maybe this is a warning that we can say, listen, the information to correct it is there. Let's start doing it. That's my only message. Now, so cybernetics is the science of governance and control in man and machine. It's an idea by Norbert Wiener. And this drawing I made will show you what we have to do, what we can do to sustain ourselves, to sustain life, to sustain the oceans, environment, climate change, and so on. We just have to look at what is available of information feedback, which is the energy to steer and adjust course. these are the boundaries of functionality. So beyond those boundaries, we go in a non-functional reality, out of control, entropy. So when we have information and we want to have a goal, for example, the one with virus control, health, economy, livelihood, social cohesion, they are always dynamic. But the information to get there, we can steer within reality. We must not lie or cheat or whatever, try to earn the unearned or get the undeserved, because that will cause destabilization in the form of entropy disorder. So when we stay within those boundaries, we can achieve any goal. And that is a real possibility. Because life is not only linear, but also non-linear. Living systems are not always only cause and effect. I do something, then something else happens. But yet, the global governance system is created as a linear control system. You do this, I do that, he do that, he does this, we do that, for example. But then we run into this limitation of boundary of reductionism, it's called. So we are trying to, for example, use technology regulation to suppress the non-linear reality, but that is impossible because that is against the laws of physics. The laws of physics, meaning the laws of complexity, are non-linear. And as you understand by now, hopefully, is that with information, we can maximize the control of the non-linear reality. So information is needed. See, feedback, information, cognition, conversation, and cooperation is needed to control, maximize, steer, and govern the non-linear reality, because we cannot control everything as human beings by just looking at cause and effect. That was a Newtonian way of perception that is now still being taught in universities. Regulation, technology, and you can see that when you look at the World Economic Forum, they think that technology, for example, the new codes, the regulations to have a personal connecting system in your brain and so on, you know, to control human beings is not possible, because a human being is a non-linear reality, not just a linear reality. And I think that perception can be changed, or should be changed, by talking about it, by getting this message out there. And I hope you will help me with that. So collateral damage due to politically motivated handling of global crisis is therefore caused by information selection and suppression. The Global Risk Report by the World Economic Forum reports collateral damage. People's perception of reality will prevent change due to ulterior motivation, to say, what's in it for me? I don't care about the rest. Learning, education, information are the energy needed to change disorder into order, reduce uncertainty, and ensure human well-being, the sustenance of the conditions for life, and perhaps more importantly, happiness, justice, and freedom for all. You know, they think like that. That's the problem. The perception of controlling it by technology is unattainable, it's untenable. And when we do not accept that, we think in linear and reductionistic ways, we keep thinking it's possible. But as I just tried to explain, this is impossible. So all these goals will fail. All these goals are unsustainable. Why? First of all, because they do not allow information to correct them, first of all.
Another thing, and I don't know if I'm kind of crossing things wrongly here, so you can correct me on this one, but the God gene, okay, would you describe information as the God gene?
God gene, what's that? Sorry?
the God gene. Yeah.
Oh, the God gene, the gene.
Yeah. Would you say information is the God
Oh,
gene?
right. Yeah, yeah. You're thinking about Richard Dawkins or something.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know,
Yeah.
if information is always experiencing itself and correcting itself.
It really looks like it. It really looks like it that you can make that comparison, sure. Because if it's a bit of information, and information is the fundamental building block of life, because life cannot be sustained without communications, for example, then it will be the God's gene. Yeah, the original building block of life is the information in the form of a thing, right? Because it's measurable, it's quantifiable also. So it is not just an idea that doesn't weigh anything, it can be weighed information, right? So yeah, okay, I agree with you.
Well, it was just putting it out there. It just came to me as you were talking.
Yeah.
And another thing you talked about was that we're, you know, I think you said Fritjof Capra said this, but living in a crisis of perception.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, given that we live in this crisis of perception now, whether that's people being brainwashed or, you know, a dominant narrative that's devoid of total, true, you know, information of integrity, would you say that's pure stupidity, or would you say that's planned?
I think it's maybe just, let's say, unawareness, first of all. Stupidity may be too strong, but unawareness. People have been educated in a certain way, have been conditioned by social circumstance and so on. So yeah, I think that is a better way to put it, unawareness.
I think we touched on it because we did a podcast together, but you reminded me in this presentation, which is cooperation is the basis for survival, not competition. And that kind of leads on to one of the questions, which is, how can one stop the damage caused by politically motivated decisions?
By being heard, like, you know, that this message is being heard, at least transmitted to the people who are making those motivational decisions. That's what I've been trying, you know. I'm in contact with one politician, for example, here in Switzerland, and one in Holland, and they are very reluctant to to allow that information that I give them to use it, because they also believe in the similar. They have been also been conditioned really to think not in that way yet. They still think in this linear causality way to control things. Yeah. But but it takes time, because I mean, it took me also time to learn this and to see it, you know, to understand it.
So just as a background, I've got the cats jumped up, and so if anyone sees the tail, right, oh, that's information I need to share. Yeah. Okay, so another question is, because one of the part of the theory, the systems theory, is that order comes from chaos. Yeah. So given that order comes from chaos, so from the current chaos, yeah, what kind of order do you think there'll be?
Okay, first thing I think I should answer that the universe is, according to physics, entropic. So it is like going to entropy, into disorder, slowly. We are now in a time period, a couple of million years maybe, that is quite stable, right? So it is not in chaos. The nature is not really in chaos at the moment. Nature is stable because it sustains life, right? It comes, you know, the sun comes up. We can put our seeds in the ground, and we can eat from the garden again, right? So people, the anthropogenetic perception creates the chaos. And we can then, as I said before, we have the information to, you know, put it back into order. We have that information. It's out for us, because life is not really in chaos, but people's actions create the chaos because of the perception problem. So when we, again, show them that the perception that they have is false or mistaken, and that life really works like this, as I tried to explain to you, then maybe we can convince them, hey, we need to, if we want to sustain ourselves as well, because they're also part of it. Nobody escapes those laws of physics, right? So.
Yes, that was one of the things that we talked about very early on when we first met. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I absolutely love your work, AREND, and I'm surprised that more people don't discuss these things, because, you know, these ideas, like you quoted, like Richard Capra and others, they've been around for a while as well, and you're developing them within current contexts. But do you think these ideas can be, or how would you describe these ideas in layman's terms? And can, you know, given that people are conditioned to not be too critically thinking, you know, you're asking for more people to get on board, you know, with this thinking and influence change. So what's your ideas about, you know, can it be understood in layman's terms, and do we need a certain level of critical thinking to grasp these truths?
Yeah, what I find in my work, you know, I train people worldwide, and I use this theory directly in the field. So when I just ask, okay, I go into an organization and say, what information is there, right? And I test them. So I give them 10 questions. I test how much or whatever, what they know or what they don't know. And from then I build up, okay, we have an information deficit, and then we can now fill in the gaps. We can collect the information. Is the information here? Yes. So this is really a practical way, as you say, to use it, you know, in layman's terms. So you only see, you go into a room, or you drive a car, or you go somewhere and say, oh, I forgot this, I forgot that. Information deficit. I cannot do my job. I cannot do my, I'm not going to get where I want to be, or I cannot achieve my purpose. So when you have a purpose, and this is, for example, operational control, health and safety, medical control, all you have to do is see, do I have enough information? Do I have enough tools? Do I have enough capability? Do I have enough people? Which is called requisite variety. So you have to build that variety that you need, requisite, to do that, to achieve that purpose. And this is also a cybernetical law, really. It's there. So the things to do this are evident. They are there. Now we just have to make them mainstream known.
Well, I mean, it's been fascinating to hear you speak. I'm just wondering if there are any more questions that people would like to post. Yeah. But one final thing that strikes me from what you're saying is that ethics is integral to the information system being fully functioning, that it can't exist outside of ethics. So that gives an absolute to ethics rather than a value perception of what is right and wrong.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I taped a part of an interview by Elon Musk last week, and he says, I'm absolutely obsessed with truth. That's what he said. And he also, in the same interview, he acknowledged that information theory could be more fundamental than physics. So you see, he knows already. That's why he bought Twitter. I'm sure of it, because he realizes that if we keep on living in this surrealistic motivational chaos, everything will collapse. You cannot build a Tesla without being ethical. You cannot build a space ship without being ethical. You have to use all the possible information in technology, in capability, in knowledge, and so on, to do that. Everything what we build that must work, must be built with reality, in ethics, in truth.
Well, that's a very current and poignant kind of example to make, especially of Elon Musk. I mean, I don't hold a particular view as to which side he sits on in all of this. and certainly with buying Twitter, or being a major shareholder as well, one wonders, is it about the control of information, and for what purposes? It's very, very interesting what that you just said. We don't have any more questions at this stage, but I do really want to thank you, Aaron, for coming to talk, because that was really informational, and also, just very good to get a worldview perspective and to understand how consciousness operates through information. You talked about going into organisations to help them understand their information deficit. Is there anything you would like to just say in relation to that, of how people might find you?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on the web, AREND VAN CAMPEN, sustenanceforall.com. You can find my research there, and there's a lot of videos, interviews, and lectures I created for YouTube. You can listen to them. So if you're interested, please give me a call or contact me. As I said, one of my slogans is "Big things have small beginnings." So I think we are on the right track, and I believe in the limitless creativity of man. And I think when we look at things, we can solve all these problems, but we must have the political will to do it. And if people think that they control life by force, they are mistaken. That'll be, because that will give you exactly the opposite result. Censorship, for example, gives you the opposite result. So if people keep on believing that, politicians and wealthy class elites, that they can control it, they are mistaken, because they cannot escape the laws of physics. And because this is physics, this is reality, this is nature, we just have to copy her, and then we'll be fine.
Well, that's an intensely positive note to end on. That all Machiavellian plans will be laid bare and fail ultimately. So that's great to know that. I want to thank you, Aaron, for coming. As always, get a lot from speaking to you. And I also want to thank the participants who have come today, and also those that will watch the replay of this this webinar, which I'll post on my Freethinkers Hub website in the premium section. As with other things, everything on that site is of no cost to the user, because I wanted to get information out there. That's widely accessible. So once again, thank you to everyone that's here, and for you, Aaron, in coming to talk to us, and hopefully speak to you again at another time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.